You had a curiosity that allowed you to travel over the ocean to experience this, to discover this, right? And that's what I find to be severely lacking. Number one, especially in the racialized white community in America, I would say, because I deal with American racism, the racial hierarchy that we live under here, and that's one thing that I find lacking. Number one is curiosity about people's life experience that you kind of was internal for you and that you had it within yourself and then you just acted on that. I find that doesn't exist in a lot of people. Although, which is problematic because a lot of people who come to my racism discussion group report that a lot of racialized white people report that they didn't really have an understanding of the impact of racism on people who were not racialized white before coming into a greater community with them, whether it was like, oh, I'm in a relationship with a black person, then I started seeing all these things, or I made a black friend and then this happened, right? Or my boss is black and then we had this conversation, or my daughter married a black man and they had a biracial kid and then I started seeing how people treated the kid, right? So like, um, it's one of those things where once you're more in communion with people who are having a different lived experience than you, that's what triggers for a lot of people a growth in perspective, the change. But for you, you triggered it through your curiosity. And so I think that in the United States, where we have a long history of racial segregation, state enforced racial segregation, state enforced dehumanization, state enforced human hierarchy. I think that obviously our political powers want to perpetuate and continue. I think that much is very difficult to deny at this point. Um, I think that it's just very difficult to for a lot of people to understand that under that fact pattern, your curiosity is the only defense. You know, like the only defense is you making a conscious choice to go outside of your little community, to go outside of your little bubble, and to actively and intentionally put yourself in a situation where you might not be that comfortable, but where you're going to learn about people who are different from you and you're going to have experiences of people different from you. And that's what I did. I did the same thing because I had that same kind of curiosity that you have, Ali. And that's why I lived with three Dominican grandmothers in New York City, right? That's why I lived with you in the Bronx, right? And got to know you and learn more about what it meant to be a Muslim, right? And like, think about all the conversations we had about it and everything that I learned, right? We went deep, brother, right? So,
Yeah.
it's
Same for me. Same
right.
for me about how I learned about you.
Yeah. And so both of us had that curiosity. It's what allowed us to grow our perspective racially, in terms of religion, and God and all of it. And I think that's why a lot of people say what kind of allows them to see race and racism more clearly, like, or develop a racial lens, is the education they get in college, right? Because just like you experienced by going over to Israel, the classes where you learned about the history of Zionism, you got to see people's perspectives on it. You got to see the lived experience of people there. In college, you get that same kind of dynamic. You've got classes where you're learning, and then you're also in communion with people from all over the world. So you also get a
Right.
chance to kind of test some of the things you're learning experientially. And
Yeah.
that experience is just, it's beyond valuable, and it doesn't really exist in many arenas outside of the college experience. So one thing
Mm.
that is the goal of the Contraband Wagon is to create such an experience, to create such a space where this engagement can occur.
Yeah. Yeah. I would, I mean, apart from what you're doing right here, right now, I love that learning experience. And in fact, like I've really been wanting it again. And I, you know, constantly want to learn in my life. I was thinking about doing another international trip, and the thought always occurs to me like I don't just want to go on vacation. I got the best experiences when I was part of these a few different programs like this, where I was learning and experiencing another society, another culture, another racial group, on a very intimate level, right? And so I think that's experience and breaking down our own perceptions or challenging our perceptions. I think it's natural that it occurs through experience, right? Like you're talking about how some of the conversations you've had in the work that you do, you know, um, white Americans might not fully understand what it means to live life as a Black American until they come into relationship with someone who is a Black American. Um, and I think a part of me used to be sad that it had to that change or that challenge wouldn't have occurred unless they had that personal interaction, right? Like I would think to myself, why can't someone rationalize objectively that my lived experience is not the same as another person's? But I think it's also, but I've come to really embrace the idea that it's also part of our human nature that to have change when we have personal experiences, right? And so that's why these conversations are really important because you're having one conversation at a time, and that's you're not going to get change from a book, maybe, right? You're not going to get change from a lecture series, but you might get change from personal interactions and shared lived common experiences. Um, Despite our racial differences, the vast majority, if not all, of our experiences as human beings are virtually the same as any other human beings, regardless of their race or ethnic background. And I think that sometimes with the existence of racial hierarchies that are supported by powerful structures, that can be hard to see. So these conversations, I think, are really important.
Absolutely. And